Today we are going to deal with the topic Bacillus. We'll be mainly concentrating on Bacillus anthracis and Bacillus cereus, where Bacillus anthracis is very pathogenic to man and Bacillus cereus is one of the common food contaminants. Bacillus means rod-shaped bacteria. Generally, all the gram-positive spore-forming bacilli, they are divided into two genera, that is Bacillus and Clostridia. Bacillus are obligated aerobes with bulging spores, whereas Clostridia are obligate anaerobes with non-bulging spores. Now coming on to the major characteristics of Bacillus, they are obligate, they are aerobic, they are gram-positive, they are spore-forming rods. These are the common characteristics of all the Bacillus. Then all are also motile and non-capsulated, but these two characteristics are exceptional in the case of Bacillus anthracis, where you can find the totally different thing in these two characteristics. That is, in Bacillus anthracis, the bacteria is non-motile and capsulated. Okay, so that's a difference of the anthracis bacteria from the members of its own family. Among all the Bacillus species, it's only Bacillus anthracis and Bacillus cereus that are commonly pathogenic to man. Rest of them are found everywhere, like in air, soil, water, dust, and also frequently a contaminant in bacteriological cultural media. Now coming on to Bacillus anthracis, which is the anthrax bacteria. So anthrax, the word, it's a Greek-derived word which means coal, and this coal refers to the appearance of the cutaneous anthrax lesions that a person suffering gets. It looks like it's a black lesion which is got as a result of cutaneous anthrax, coal-like color, black color, so hence it got its name, anthrax. The causative agent of anthrax is this Bacillus anthracis, the anthracis disease, which is a very important age-old zoonotic disease. It had a high ability to be used as a biological weapon. It was used once for bioterrorism also. Okay, as we already told, they are non-motile and capsulated. Please remember that it is different from the other Bacillus in the way that it is non-motile and capsulated, and they are arranged in chains. Okay. Now going on to the historical importance, it is the first pathogenic bacterium which is observed under the microscope. Anthrax was also found to be the first communicable disease by transmission through inoculation of infected blood. Well, the first isolated bacteria in pure form was also anthrax bacteria, which was done by Robert Koch. And the anthrax vaccine was the first live attenuated vaccine which was prepared by Louis Pasteur. So that goes about the historical importance. Then now we come on to the virulent factors of anthrax and its pathogenesis. Well, the major factors of anthrax bacillus are anthrax toxin and anthrax capsule. First, anthrax toxin. So anthrax toxin, they are tripartite toxin, means they consist of three fragments. Three fragments together form anthrax toxins, and they are edema factor, protective factor, and lethal factor. Okay, edema factor is the most active fragment in that, and their mechanism of action is they act as adenyl cyclase, and they will increase the host cell immunity. Hence they are responsible for edema and other manifestations seen in anthrax. Next is the protective factor, which is the binding fragment. Obviously, the mechanism of action is it binds to the host cell receptors and facilitate the entry of other fragments. So it has binding ability and will facilitate the entry of the other two fragments into the cell. Lethal factor, obviously the word itself says it is a lethal fragment because it acts by cleaving of the host cell MAPK, that is mitogen activated protein kinase. So that goes in for a cell destroying. Finally, it is hence being responsible for the cell death. One thing you have to understand is that these separate fragments will not work individually as a toxin. Three have to be in combination. Only then they'll work as the powerful anthrax toxin. And only then will they be able to produce local edema and general shock. So, toxin synthesis hence is controlled by plasma PXO1. This toxin synthesis, it's binding together the plasmid that takes care of its togetherness. The together of these three factors is the plasmid factor. So loss of this plasmid factor is going to make that particular anthrax strain avirulent, because it's going to lose all its power of virulent factors if it is not together. So that is one of the basic ideas of anthrax vaccine, which was prepared by Pasteur. Next we come on to anthrax capsule. The Bacillus anthracis has a polypeptide capsule which is made up of polyglutamate. Okay, usually all the capsules found in bacteria are made up of polysaccharide, but here you have Bacillus anthracis with polyglutamate material of capsule. So it's a polypeptide capsule. This is a plasma coated capsule with the help of plasma PXO2. The main function is that it inhibits complement mediated phagocytosis. Okay. Now we'll go for the clinical manifestations. Clinical manifestations of anthrax are seen in both animals and in humans. In animals it is called animal anthrax, while herbivores are the most commonly affected organisms of animal anthrax than carnivores. The infection occurs by the ingestion of the spores in the soil. It presents usually as fatal septicemia, and localized cutaneous lesions also occur sometimes. It's rare. Transmission of spores occur from the infected animals through discharge from nose, mouth and rectum into the soil, and that's how the spore transmits. So from the discharge of nose, mouth and rectum, the spores are transmitted on the soil, and this soil comes in contact with the next cattle or next animal. Now humans, where it is called human anthrax. Here you have three kinds of transmission, where there's inhalation of spores. Now that is going to lead to a condition called pulmonary anthrax, and ingestion of carcasses of animals which died of anthrax. Ingestion can obviously lead to intestinal anthrax, it's rare, and cutaneous anthrax, cutaneous mode, where the spores enter through abraded skin, which is common in people with occupational exposure to animals, like people who work in animal products industries, like with their hides and all. These people are more exposed to cutaneous mode of transmission. So types of human anthrax, as I already told, it is cutaneous anthrax, otherwise called Hyde-Porter's disease, pulmonary anthrax, otherwise called Wool-Sorter's disease, and intestinal anthrax. Most common happens to be pulmonary anthrax. It was used in bioterrorism outbreaks. In fact, long ago, anthrax was used in letter bombs. Like the attackers used to send letters with these anthrax spores. They used to send it by mail. People used to open it and check there's nothing, but they inhale that anthrax spores and they are affected by pulmonary anthrax. So it was a very very much used tool of bioterrorism. Inhalation of spores from contaminated animal products can also, if they are infected and you inhale those contaminated products, that also can go in for pulmonary anthrax. Now to understand this better, let's see the various differences between cutaneous and pulmonary anthrax. As we told, cutaneous anthrax is otherwise called Hyde-Porter's disease. Pulmonary anthrax otherwise called Wool-Sorter's disease. Well, Hyde-Porter's disease because it is commonly occurring in the dock workers carrying loads of hides and skins in their bare backs, and Wool-Sorter's disease we see in the workers of wool factory who acquire infection by inhaling the dust from the infected wool. Okay. Transmission of cutaneous anthrax via cutaneous exposure to the spores, which enters through abraded skin. The skin is cut or abraded, the spores can enter through the skin, causing cutaneous anthrax. Well, pulmonary anthrax occurs by inhalation of spores. Cutaneous anthrax is mainly characterized by malignant pustule, which you see here is malignant pustule. The lesion begins as a papule that evolves into a painless vesicle following the development of coal black necrotic eschar surrounded by non-pitting indurated edema. You can see it. It is surrounded by non-indurating edema, coal black appearance. The name anthrax, I told you, it means coal, comes from this black color. However, this is a non-malignant condition. Whereas in pulmonary anthrax, you can see that the bacilli will enter the lymphatics, it will reach the blood, it will lead to bacteremia, hemorrhagic mediastinitis and hemorrhagic meningitis. Occupational exposure exposures like the Hyde-Potter's disease occurs mainly to the dock workers, butchers, abattoir and farmers who directly have contact with the animal, its meat, its flesh or its hides. And pulmonary anthrax is mostly occurring to the workers of wool industry, okay, who are directly exposed to the infected wool. Occurrence is most common for cutaneous anthrax. Pulmonary anthrax is rare. Prognosis self-limiting, rarely becoming fatal if untreated, whereas pulmonary anthrax is very fatal. And bioterrorism rarely associated with bioterrorism, whereas in pulmonary anthrax it is most common form of anthrax to be associated with bioterrorism. Okay. Next, this is the malignant pustule. Next, we come to intestinal anthrax. Intestinal anthrax, it's a rare condition. It occurs very rarely, which occurs due to ingestion of spores contaminated with meat of animals. It is highly fatal. If it occurs, it's highly fatal, but it's rare. Manifestation by bloody diarrhea. Epidemiology. The animal anthrax is primarily a disease of herbivores, and due to effective control measures, now there has been a progressive global reduction. Now the death rate among animals suffering from anthrax has decreased for the past 3 decades in the livestock anthrax. Both enzoonotic, that is endemic, and epizoonotic, that is epidemic, disease condition occurs in India, especially in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and West Bengal. Cycle in the animals of anthrax transmission occurs as its spores remain viable in the soil for decades. So we know this is transmitted in the soil via the secretions of the animal, which will remain in the soil for decades, and this can be spread to another animal who comes in contact with the same soil, either through their skin or either when they graze the soil, something that grows in the soil. Transmission occurs via cutaneous form or ingestion of grazing animals. That's what I told. Okay. Then human anthrax, it is highest in Africa, Central and Southern Asia. It was very highly common in Africa, Central and Southern Asia. It can occur in industrial cases also, like in occupational workers from infected animal products like hide, hair, wool, etc. Even it can occur in non-industrial cases from agricultural exposure if they are exposed to anthrax infected animals also. Like either by having their meat or working in the fields with those infected animals also, they are prone to get anthrax. So that is non-industrious case. Now we are going to the lab diagnosis. Okay. Now proper precautions are to be taken. Even when you take a sample for the lab diagnosis, this is very high, so infective that it can be acquired via lab also. So you should be careful while handling a sample. Specimens processed in the biological safety cabins. So they are processed in a very safe and secure manner. Okay, so first what we do is specimen collection. Specimen collection is collected directly from the patient before the person starts antibiotic treatment. The useful specimens are the pus, swab, sputum, pus or swab from malignant pustule, that is for cutaneous anthrax, sputum in the case of pulmonary anthrax, then blood if the person is having septicemia, and CSF if the person is having hemorrhagic meningitis. Then you have gastric, aspirate, fecus or food samples in the intestinal anthrax. But most commonly we depend on the first 4 specimens. Direct demonstration by gram staining. Gram staining, you can see that there is gram positive large rectangular rods, and spores are not visible in this direct staining. See, you can see here, this is the gram staining, the direct staining, what do you say? Here you can see that there are rectangular rods of bacilli. Then comes the Mecfadian reaction. It is a very important reaction. Mecfadian reaction helps us to differentiate between Bacillus anthracis and from the other bacteria, Bacillus like Bacillus cereus and other species of the same family. This reaction helps us to identify it better. So it is used to demonstrate the presence of that polypeptide capsule. Which one? Which is in that made up of polyglutamate. Okay, so that it helps to identify that. So procedure is, it is stained with a Gur polychrome methylene blue stain for 30 seconds. Okay, so after that you can see that the capsule appears as amorphous purple material surrounding the blue bacilli. This is used for presumptive analysis or presumptive diagnosis of anthrax. See, you can see here, this is the McFadyen reaction. See, you can see here there are they are purple. This is actually purple amorphous capsule which is being highlighted here. Inside that you can see blue bacilli. These round things you see are the staining of the other cells which surround it, like the white blood cells. Okay, so this is the typical reaction of anthrax. Then you can go for direct immunofluorescence test, which is used to detect the capsular and cell wall polypeptide antigen. Then fluorescent tagged mono antibodies are also used. It is this process, this direct IF, is used for confirmative diagnosis during bioterrorism outbreaks. So mainly for pulmonary anthrax, this direct IF, direct immunofluorescence test, is very useful because they do it with monoclonal antibodies. Okay, so next is the Ascoli thermoprecipitation test. It is what a ring precipitation test. Okay, we do it in a test tube, which is done with samples in putrid form. Okay, when you get the Bacillus anthracis forms from putrid animals, like, so you test it with Ascoli thermoprecipitation test, and the bacilli are likely to be non-viable. Okay, so the procedure is the tissue sample, they're grounded in saline, they're boiled and filtered. So hence this is called the antigenic extract. Okay, then this antigenic extract is layered over the anthrax antiserum on a narrow capillary tube, and it is kept for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you can see that there's a ring of precipitate at the junction of two liquids. See, this is the Ascoli thermoprecipitation test. As you can see, after addition, you can see that there's a line of precipitation here between the soluble antigen above and antiserum antibody down. So this is how it looks. Then culture. Okay, Bacillus anthracis is aerobic and non-fastidious, which grows in ordinary media and has a wide temperature range of 12 to 45 degrees Celsius of growth. Sporulation promoted at 25 to 30 degrees Celsius in the presence of distilled water, 2% NaCl, and oxalate and oxygen. So these are the conditions that you require for sporulation. The colony morphology of Bacillus anthracis after 24 hours incubation of plates is as follows. Okay, so let's see how they are the cultures that are being used. Nutrient agar. Okay, the colonies are 2 to 3 millimeter in size. They are irregularly round, opaque, grayish white with frosted glass appearance. You can see medusa head appearance, which is evident as the colonies are viewed under low power microscope in nutrient agar. It is called so because the edge of the colony in it are composed of long interlacing chains of bacilli, which appears like locks of mated hair. So this is the typical appearance that you see in the nutrient agar. See, when it is 10 into power, you can see medusa hair-like appearance of the agar, or that is medusa hair appearance is evident in these colonies at the low power microscope. Then blood agar, it produces dry, wrinkled, non-hemolytic colonies. Okay, see, it produces dry, wrinkled, non-hemolytic colonies. This is what you see, like pearls. Okay. Then gelatin stab agar, that is the growth occurs as inverted fir tree appearance, which is a very major diagnostic feature of only Bacillus anthracis. In this test tube, after doing this stab agar, gelatin stab agar, you can see inverted fir tree appearance. It occurs due to liquefaction of gelatin, which occurs maximum at the surface and then it slows down towards the bottom. Then we have the selective media. That is a solid medium with penicillin. The colony smear shows bacilli arranged in a string of pearl appearance. The appearance occurs as the cell becomes larger and spherical because of weak cell walls under the action of penicillin and cell arranged in chains. Then we have PLET medium. PLET means it consists of P for polymyxin, L for lysozyme, E for EDTA, and T for thallus acetate, which are added in the heart infusion agar. It is mainly used to isolate the Bacillus anthracis from a mixture of other spore-bearing bacilli. Culture smear, gram staining, it reveals bamboo stick appearance. See, you can see here there is bamboo stick appearance of the Bacillus anthracis. They are arranged in chains. typical culture smear that you get after gram staining. Spores can be demonstrated using special stains like hot malachite green, which is called Ashley's method, or by 0.25% sulfuric acid, which is called acid fast method. Okay. Then lipid granules are demonstrated by staining with Sudan black bee, which is called Burdon's method. Next is serological method. Antibodies appear in convalescent sera, and hence they can be detected by ELISA or immunodiffusion in gel method. Now, molecular diagnosis. PCR is used mainly using specific primers are used for further confirmation. That is, PCR using BAPXO1 primer targeting gene coding for protective antigen. So this primer will go and attach to the gene which will code for protective antigen, hence it's visible. And PCR, which is using BAPXO2 primers, which will target the capsular gene. Molecular typing is used for epidemiological studies to find the source of infection. The methods available are MLYA, that is multiple locus variable number of tandem repeat analysis, and AFLP, that is amplified fragment length polymorphism. So this is a major revision table for you. This gives a summary of the whole lab diagnosis, the specimen, the direct demonstration by those methods. 4 methods for direct demonstration we already discussed. Then culture methods, nutrient blood agar, gelatin stab, and the selective media, and the culture smear. Then the antibody detection, molecular diagnosis, molecular type. Now guidelines for diagnosing anthrax during bioterrorism attack. After the bioterrorism experience in USA, that letter bomb attack happened in USA actually. The CDC, that is Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has prepared guidelines for identifying Bacillus anthracis during further bioterrorism attack. That is, for presumptive identification, they do gram staining. So any gram-positive bacilli with morphology and cultural properties, all the cultural properties that we talked, and all the gram-positive bacilli properties of Bacillus anthracis can be confirmed. For initial confirmation, the test can be done like lysis of gamma phage. Actually, gamma phage is very specifically takes a lytic cycle only for our Bacillus anthracis and not for any other bacteria. So it's a specific analysis. Then direct IF test. Further confirmation can also be done by PCR. Now we go for treatment of anthrax disease. It can be successfully treated by promptly recognizing an appropriate therapy is initiated early. The antibiotic regimen which are used consist of ciprofloxacin or doxycycline and clindamycin or rifampicin, which is used for 60 days. Then antibiotics for post-exposure prophylaxis, ciprofloxacin for 60 days plus doxycycline for 60 days, or you can use amoxicillin for 60 days if the strain is penicillin resistant. Then raxizumab, that is a monoclonal antibody that neutralizes anthrax toxin, that is neutralizes the protective antigen. It is used for the prophylaxis and treatment of inhalation anthrax. Now prevention. The general control measures are that is disposal of animal carcasses by burning or deburial in lime pits. So hence we know the cure, but then prevention is better than cure, right? So it can be prevented by disposing the infected animal carcasses, by decontamination, usually by autoclaving of animal products before processing them, protective clothing and gloves for handling potentially infected materials, vaccination against anthrax infections. Vaccination is the most prevalent method of anthrax prevention, and there are 2 types: live attenuated non-capsulated spore vaccine or Stern vaccine, which are used in animals, have a protective effect of 1 year after injection but not used in humans. And we have adsorbed or alum precipitated toxoid vaccine, which is prepared for protective antigen. To protect the protective antigen is targeted, and antibodies are formed against this protective antigen, which neutralizes it and prevents attachment of toxin to the host cell. So this is actually very safe, very effective for human use. The one you use is Biothrax, indicated for pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis. Okay, so pre-exposure prophylaxis for people at high risk of exposure, the route is intramuscular at 0.5 ml per dose. which is given for the primary seed is given is at 0, 1 and 6 months. Boosters are given after 6 to 12 months after primary series, and then yearly it is given. So post exposure prophylaxis, if pre-exposure means before exposure you give via IM, and if it is post exposure, after exposure, if it is to the vaccine you can give to suspected or confirmed cases are subcutaneous, that is 0.5 ml per dose, given at 0, 2 and 4 weeks post exposure with antimicrobial therapy. So that's all. Then we have about Bacillus anthracis. Now other Bacillus species, Anthracoid bacilli. The bacilli species other than anthrax bacteria is this, and among Anthracoid bacilli, the most of them are non-pathogenic and the common contaminants of lab cultures, except Bacillus cereus. It shows a general resemblance to anthrax bacilli in producing dry wrinkled colonies, and in smear appears as chains of spore-bearing gram-positive bacilli. However, there are more differences between both. So this is the general resemblance of Bacillus cereus with anthrax. Like they produce wrinkled colonies and they have spore-bearing smear to be seen in gram stain. Well, there are differences though. Most of them are the differences. I think we'll go for that. The main differences is, see, Bacillus anthracis is non-motile, Anthracoid is motile. Capsule is present here and it is absent in Anthracoid bacilli. The Bacillus anthracis has long chains and Anthracoid bacilli short chains. Under low power microscope, you can see medusa head colony seen in Bacillus anthracis, and Anthracoid you can't see that. Blood agar, there is no hemolysis in Bacillus anthracis. However, Anthracoid bacilli you have hemolytic colony. Broth turbidity is absent. Turbidity is present in Anthracoid. Salicin is not fermented. Here it is fermented in Anthracoid. Gramophage, it's susceptible to gramophage. I told you gramophage is very specific to this, but Anthracoid is resistant to gramophage. The gelatin agar, you can see inverted filtrate appearance, and because gelatin liquefaction is also slow in Bacillus anthracis, inverted filtrate appearance is not seen, and rapid gelatin liquefaction for Anthracoid bacilli. Solid medium with penicillin. Okay, in penicillin you can see strings of pearl appearance, whereas in Anthracoid bacilli there is no growth. At 45 degrees Celsius, there is no growth for Bacillus anthracis, but Anthracoid bacilli will grow. Virulence, obviously Bacillus anthracis is more pathogenic. Anthracoid bacilli overall is less pathogenic. Now coming on to Bacillus cereus, it is a normal habitat of soil, widely associated with food contamination, can be isolated from vegetables, milk, cereal, spice, meat, poultry, which if they are infected with Bacillus cereus. One of the main important agents of food poisoning. We know, Staphylococcus is also an important food poisoning. Similarly, you have Bacillus cereus, also an important food poisoning agent. Clinical manifestations, food poisoning. It consists of two toxins, okay, diarrheal toxin and emetic toxin. Diarrheal toxin is going to cause diarrheal type of food poisoning, and emetic toxin is going to cause emetic type of food poisoning. So let's go for the differences. Incubation period of diarrheal type is longer, that is 8 to 16 hours, and emetic type is 1 to 5 hours. The toxin of diarrheal type is secreted in the intestine. Only once it reaches the intestine it is secreted, which is similar to Clostridium perfringens toxin in structure and progress. I mean, like they resemble the enterotoxin of Clostridium perfringens. And emetic type. In the emetic type, you have preformed toxin. The toxin is formed before it reaches the intestine, hence it has fast action. Heat, the diarrheal type is heat labile and emetic type is heat stable. Okay. Then food items contamination occurs in meat, vegetables, dried beans and cereals in diarrheal type, and rice, usually fried rice, in emetic type. Clinical feature: diarrhea, fever, abdominal cramps for diarrheal type, and vomiting and abdominal cramps seen in emetic type. Well, serotypes involved are 2, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, and emetic are 1, 3 and 5. Okay. So the other manifestations you can see in they're more complex. Usually it's food poisoning, but if it goes more complicated, it can go in for ocular disease, which is causes severe keratitis and panophthalmitis for following eye trauma, and finally leading to vision loss. The other okay. Now, the other complications that can rarely occur are endocarditis, osteomyelitis, meningitis, and pneumonia. Now, coming on to the lab diagnosis of Bacillus cereus, the Bacillus cereus can be isolated from feces by selective media like MYPA and uh, PEMBA. Okay, MIPA. MIPA, where M stands for mannitol, Y for the yolk that is egg yolk, polymyxin B and phenol red, and A for agar. Then you have the PEMBA, that is where P stands for polymyxin B, E stands for egg yolk, M for mannitol, B for bromothymol blue, and A for agar. So one thing you've noticed, it is a motile microorganism. It is also non-capsulated and is not susceptible to gamma phage. It is just the ulta, or just the opposite behavior in these three things of Bacillus anthracis. Bacillus anthracis is the opposite of this. Just remember that. Okay, so treatment, the administration of clindamycin, erythromycin, vancomycin, aminoglycosides, and tetracyclines, because Bacillus cereus are susceptible to all these. Penicillin and trimethoprim should not be used because they are resistant. Bacillus cereus is resistant to these two because they can produce beta-lactamase, which will destroy the beta-lactam antibiotics. Now, Bacillus thuringiensis, they are closely related to Bacillus cereus, and occasionally they produce food poisoning, very, very rare. They are used as larvicidal agent for mosquito control. They are also an effective biopesticide in agriculture. I don't know if you remember, like BT cotton, BT tomato. So all these are made with the help of Bacillus thuringiensis gene, which has a particular advantage over chemical pesticides. This is a biopesticide, so its gene will be inculcated in the plants, so they will be free of other infections or other attacks of insects and all. So what BT cotton, that BT stands for that. Okay, then Bacillus spores are used as sterilization control. The Bacillus species are used as biological indicators to check the efficacy of sterilization process. Example, Geobacillus stereothermophilus, which is used for autoclave, hydrogen peroxide, gas plasma sterilizer, and liquid acetic acid sterilizer. So they are used for sterilization because they are very heat stable. Bacillus atrophius, which is used for ethylene oxide sterilizer and dry heat sterilizers. Then you have Bacillus subtilis. The Bacillus subtilis, they have a lot of industrial uses, like they're used as clinical agents or detergents. They're used in paper and textile industries because they produce amylase that can break down starch. They are used as pesticides to protect crops from fungi. They are used for pollution treatment by breaking down the pollutants, that is bioremediation. They are involved in that sludge formation and all, which we study in that biocompost process. Then in food industry, they help in fermentation. So that's all about Bacillus. Thank you.